How's it going, everybody? And welcome to my review of Judd Apatow's latest directorial film, only his sixth movie that he's directed. It's hard to believe because it seems like he's everywhere. The King of Staten Island, starring SNL star Pete Davidson. Now, this is something of a semi-autobiographical movie for Pete Davidson because he co-wrote the screenplay as well as stars in the film as Scott, a 24-year-old burnout who lives with his mom, who's played by Marissa Tomei, after losing his firefighter father at a young age, much like Pete Davidson himself did. As I mentioned, a lot of autobiographical or biographical aspects in this film. This follows the conventional Judd Apatow formula of immature character in a state of arrested development finds maturity through circumstance and necessity, which we've seen particularly in the movies that Judd Apatow has directed. What makes this film unique is the fact that it ties so closely to Pete Davidson's life and is very centered on this character of Scott and everything that happens around him. And that works to the movie's credit some, and it actually works to its detriment as well, partially because there is a very talented supporting cast in the film. As I mentioned, Marissa Tomei, also Bill Burr, who plays Ray, a firefighter who starts a romance with Scott's mother and inevitably clashes with Scott. And then we have Belle Powley, who plays Scott's friend Casey, who is waiting for him to take the next step, both in life and in their relationship together. Actually, I found that she was, in my mind, in a very talented cast, kind of the standout star of the movie. Certainly not the one that the movie is about, but I actually wanted to know more about her character, about her journey, because she is taking in the background a very interesting kind of journey on her own. Judd Apatow's movies have this tendency to kind of meander a little bit and wander from thing to thing to put a bunch of characters in the movie and then hop around a bunch. This was a character that they hopped around from a lot that I wish that they had spent more time with, because we are expected to invest a little bit into this relationship between Scott and Casey. I really wish that we had spent more on that relationship because I was legitimately interested in what she was going throughout this movie as well. As it stands, we spend a lot of time with Scott as he smokes weed and hangs out with his friends and is really generally kind of an a-hole to anyone and everyone in his life. And you can have characters that do unlikable things. It'd be boring if you didn't. And you can have characters who are flawed. You can have characters who say or do things that you're not supposed to like them for. But I do think in the long run that you are supposed to like Scott. This movie spends so much time with him being unlikable that I actually had a hard time in the end wanting to root for him, because I feel like he skipped over a bunch of the things that you should do as a character and honestly as a person in order to redeem yourself or in order to put yourself on a path to redemption or to a better life. Maybe it's just because I'm getting older. It probably is a big part of it, but I just had a very hard time, first of all, relating to Scott. Obviously, this is a character who has gone through a lot of pain and a lot of trauma, but then again, so have some of the other people in his life, and they're not acting in this manner. They're not acting in this way. They're getting on with their lives. I wanted him to get out of the house. I wanted him to get a job. I thought that the way he was treating everyone was unfair. And I think part of it is, of course, you're supposed to think that that's a character aspect, but I think you're also I think Pete Davidson and Judd Apatow perhaps empathize with this character just on a personal level more than I did, because we spent so much time in the negative parts of his life that I was kind of turned off to him altogether by the time we wanted to start coming around on who he was and what his next step was going to be. As I mentioned, this was obviously a movie that had some therapeutic quality for Pete Davidson. It is rooted in a real-life tragedy in his past. His performance is centered in that reality, and it's not a bad performance. I think that it kind of hits one note. Pete Davidson is not a seasoned film actor, particularly when you talk about taking on a role of this size and of this importance of being the centerpiece of a movie. I felt like he hits a kind of Seth Rogen quality consistently throughout the film, but that Seth Rogen note where he's kind of frustrated and anxious and confused and is just kind of yelling at somebody to get out of here. I felt like that was the note that Pete Davidson hit through most of the film. It's not a bad performance by any means, and I think it is because he's drawing on so much of himself for this movie. And that's really what all actors do, is that they draw on on their personal experiences to bring characters to life. My main concern with Pete Davidson is I think he's got a lot of potential. I just hope that he himself doesn't stereotype his own work in these roles that are sort of burnouts and guys that live at home. I think that you can use that pain and you can use those experiences to play all different kinds of characters. And I hope that Pete Davidson going forward decides to branch out because he is a gifted comedic actor. I think this movie shows the beginnings of a talent to be a gifted dramatic actor. It's all where you choose to apply those skills. So I hope that he branches out from these kinds of roles that he's played early in his career to try some other things. As far as Judd Apatow goes, I think we've got what we're going to get. Particularly when he's co-writing and directing his own movies. He seems like a director who is very interested in these stories of kind of kicking somebody out of an extended Arrested Development, kicking somebody out of this period where they should be doing things that older people are doing, whether it's The 40-Year-Old Virgin, Knocked Up, Trainwreck. These movies have varied from very good to okay, and this is kind of where I landed on this movie. I thought this movie was okay. The performances are good. I like Bill Burr and Marissa Tomei and the others that I've mentioned already in the review. There's nothing wrong on that level. I felt like the story was a bit aimless and drifted a bit. I felt like the characters weren't as well rounded as they could have been. But this is Judd Apatow's style. It's almost this kind of mainstream comedy Richard Linklater thing where he's doing a character study but merged to the bones of a studio comedy, and I don't necessarily think that synthesis always works. We're in this kind of mode now where it's not about buying a ticket to a movie, it's about watching it at home, and do you want to pay $20 to rent this movie at home? I wouldn't necessarily recommend that you pay $20 to do the VOD thing right now. I'm sure a rental window is going to open up where you could rent it at home for $6 or $7, and at that point I'd say it's worth it. If you're a Pete Davidson fan, if you're a Judd Apatow fan, if you've liked a lot of Judd Apatow's other movies better than I have, then I think you'll probably enjoy it a little bit more than I did. But it says something when the most emotionally involved that I personally got with this movie was toward the end. There's a scene where Pete and his mother are talking on the couch during one of the best scenes of Game of Thrones. They're just talking right through it. It's the scene where Joffrey gets slapped in the face repeatedly, by the way, by Tyrion Lannister. I was more emotionally involved in trying to get them to watch that scene because it's such a great scene than I was in most of the other movies, parts of the movie. So yeah, King of Staten Island was okay for me. It didn't hit a lot of the beats that it should have. It hit a few of them that it was aiming for, but generally I think it could have done with a little bit more focus and a little bit more work on this character's journey, other than just knowing who he is at the beginning of the film and inhabiting that world, which I think we do for a little bit too long. That's my review of The King of Staten Island. Did you see the movie? What did you think? It's been at the top of the VOD chart, so it looks like a lot of people have been watching it. Let me know down in the comments below. And if you want to talk about even more movie stuff, you can check me out on Patreon, patreon.com/Dan Murrell. We do my monthly movie club. We do a monthly movie commentary. We have a Patreon exclusive show called Dan Decides. So much fun stuff. You can check it out. And here are just a few of the producer level patrons who help me keep things running over there. These folks have been so amazing and so supportive early on as I launch this channel and as I launch everything over on Patreon. So thank you to them, and thank you to you for watching this review. I will be back with more reviews, charts, news, you name it, right here. Until next time, thanks for watching.